anything that's repetitive, you can create an AI workflow. You identify your operational process that you do before AI. And then you start thinking, well, what can AI replace here? How do we streamline this process with an AI creative tool? It could be Canva, for example. The most popular one can be Canva, but there's a lot out there. And so for social media, you can integrate a Canva tool. You can integrate your social media content calendar tool, posting calendar tool. It could be MailChimp, it could be Editor, it could be Hootsuite, and they allow you to integrate the repetitive task and then train that repetitive task with AI.
If you're enjoying the show, hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. You'll get the latest on marketing, AI, and how to grow your business. It only takes 2 seconds and really helps the show grow, so please hit subscribe and then continue listening. Roberto, thanks for coming on the podcast today. What are you excited about in the AI space or the AI marketing space right now?
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. A couple of things, really understanding workflows and AI workflows. And I think if you aren't operationally minded, you will be now. I think that's one of the things that really gets me going in the morning is understanding how to create systems. And if you have an existing system already, for those small business owners who are what we call crossing the chasm, they reached $1 million or trying to reach 5, 10, $15 million. They realize very quickly it's all about operations. And so now they have a superhuman tool, AI, that allows them to run a little bit faster, more efficiently. And so that's really where the past 3-4 months I've been spending my time is operationalizing our operations using AI workflows and AI agents. We've created a software tool that's powered by AI 2.5 years ago. But the more I dive into it, the more I realize it's all about understanding how do you make your systems run faster and more efficiently. So that's been taking up a lot of my time.
Amazing. And so, like, when you say AI workflows, or obviously people know what AI agents are, but if someone's listening and thinking, what's an AI workflow? Could you just sort of speak to, what they are and sort of how you're using those in your business currently?
A great question. So when you think about specifically on the marketing side, anything that's repetitive and that you can do again and again and again, or you do again and again and again for your business. For my business, we're a marketing agency and a software company. So we do social media content calendars. We do social media paid ad campaigns across TikTok, Google, Meta, email marketing campaigns. Anything that's repetitive, you can create an AI workflow. In essence, you identify your operational process that you do before AI. And then you start thinking, well, what can AI replace here? How do we streamline this process with an AI creative tool? It could be Canva, for example. The most popular one can be Canva, but there's a lot out there. And so for social media, you can integrate a Canva tool. You can integrate your social media content calendar tool, posting calendar tool. It could be MailChimp. It could be Editor. It could be Hootsuite. And they allow you to integrate the repetitive task and then train that repetitive task with AI. And what ends up happening is as you're providing it information in the form of content, it starts learning what's working and what's not working within that script. It starts creating the script or the post that you're doing. You can integrate Canva to create the image. And then it provides you feedback after you're done creating that social media content calendar with that AI tool. I'll say, this is how it worked. This is how it didn't work in the form of impressions, clicks, conversions, i.e. sales and or leads. And then I'll provide you a report. So something that used to be very manual when you have a social media marketing manager, a copywriter, a paid ad specialist, and a graphic designer, create all that. Now you can use multiple AI tools to integrate in workflow without having to use a human. You still need a human in the loop. You still need a person to actually review the workflow.
And
But
set
once
it
you
up.
do that, and set it exactly. The setup piece,
Mhm.
it sounds not as hard, but a little bit more steps than I just made it seem. But that's really, if you spend, a couple hours or 8 to 10 hours to set up that system, if you keep that contract for 6 months to a year, I mean, it's paying itself off within the first month. So
Mhm, mhm. And do you and your team kind of, obviously it sounds like it's a very custom sort of approach, where it's sort of looking at, like you mentioned, what are some repetitive processes or different things, that the business is doing, and then how can we automate this? Like, is it kind of like a custom solution, or is it like, do you train the people in the companies to do it? Do you just do it for clients? Like, what does that kind of process look
Oh, no,
like?
we do it for clients. That's a whole other business model. I love that business model, Ellie. I think there is a definite space. The challenge is communicating the value. So
Okay.
if you're sitting somewhere in Southeast Asia and you're trying to figure out how do I be a digital nomad and create an amazing career for myself in a remote location, this is the way you do it. The challenge you always have is communicating value, and there's always a lag in technology. So, and what do I mean by this? So you can literally talk to a business owner, and if you can convince them that you know how to create these AI agents for them, then there's value there. The challenge is convincing them. So for ourselves, we're a marketing agency. Really what we're doing is we're definitely not creating the agent for the business owner. We're
Mhm.
outsourcing that work to ourselves. And so it's easier to talk to a business owner about, hey, we'll create your social media content calendar, or we'll update your logo, or we'll run your logo paid ads and your TikTok paid ads. And then on the back end, we just create the agent for ourselves for that specific client. Now, you know, if the client leaves you in a month, it probably won't be a good use of your time. But if you see this as a legacy client that you want to invest energy in, then it makes a lot of sense. I actually have a great friend named Marlon. He's out in New York, and this is what he does for a living. He goes out there and he creates AI agents for enterprise play companies. So these are companies that are larger in scope, 1,000 plus employees, and they are trying to understand how to use the AI agent. And right now, he says most of the time is spent on legal and then operational systems.
Yeah, I think especially for like larger businesses, the legal piece and the confidentiality piece becomes like super important, especially like I think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but in terms of like legal or professional services, accounting firms, they obviously like have a lot of client data that they need to keep private and all of that. And so it becomes like a bigger challenge of like, how do we implement these systems and how do we train our staff and what controls do we have in place for security and all these different things. So yeah, it's super interesting just the difference between like, say,
Um,
like a solopreneur and then like, yeah, some of these big corporations implementing AI.
I mean, if you could match the two, with an AI consulting with legal, I mean, that's literally 80%. That's a whole new workflow. And I think one of the things that's really exciting, if you do have larger enterprise playing listeners, is understanding that you'll still need like a AI project manager or AI operational manager that advocates for AI and then is able to implement AI according to what the most vital departments are for integration. There's obviously low hanging fruit, but that piece is something that, as you know, as you get bigger and there's more bureaucracy, so getting your legal side with your operational side married together and executing on this operational AI piece is probably the most important piece that I think a lot of enterprise players are doing at the moment.
For sure, for sure. And in terms of like AI agents, I've heard kind of mixed sort of things about like what they can do. And,
Yeah.
obviously like they're a
Mm.
work in progress and it's going to take time for them to fully be able to sort of take control, like in the same way that, say, an employee could or a customer service agent. What's kind of been your experience with AI agents, sort of either in your company or for your clients or just, in your own kind of, research? Like, what have you sort of seen in that?
Yeah, no, no, you know, the perfect is the enemy of the good, right? We're not trying to build perfection here. So from our space and what we saw a ton of success is knowledge transfer.
Is it?
So what do we mean by that? It's just a fancy term saying if we could get an AI agent to train, upskill prospective folks on operations, on HR, on associates, without having to have an actual human, and that it probably would be the best use. And how do you do this through avatars, right? So that is, and in what language? Whatever language that avatar or that employee needs to learn or be upskilled in. And so that's where we see a lot of success is knowledge transfer for enterprise, for small business. If you're trying to outsource your HR, I always think about what's that last 30 years, what has been the growth in productivity, nearshoring, offshoring in the 90s to early 2000s, big corporations going and finding talent across the world as the world became globalized. And so your operational costs foster the floor because it costs so much less for you to be able to hire that talent. But no, you kind of don't need that talent in, Southeast Asia or in Eastern Europe or in South America. You can literally get an avatar and train that avatar with knowledge transfer, or whatever you needed to have, and whatever language you need to have, and whatever dialect you need to have. So I've seen a lot of success in that space. And for someone that does a lot of technical assistance training, part of the work that I do is train business owners on how to use technology. Um, I think those are going to be coming fast and serious in the next 2 to 5 years.
No, I totally agree. I think it's something that is just so changing so quickly. Is just these AI
Yeah.
tools and these AI programs and agents, and it's just kind of like trying to keep up with what's happening in the space, and just how do we implement, and what do we implement, and when do we implement it, and really kind of there can be, I think, this pressure to like, go and push, and sometimes it's like there's real magic and value in pausing and taking a moment to go, what are we trying to solve? Like, what is the goal? Do we need AI in this space? And if so, like, what do we need the AI tool to do before going to the marketplace, before going to implement something, like really taking that pause and getting clear on like what processes do we want to automate, or even before that, like what processes are taking up the most time or causing bottlenecks in the company. And then, starting to evaluate, and like, rather than just diving in and picking a shiny new tool, which is really exciting, but it can be very overwhelming, and it can then cause more problems down the track. So it's like, how, like, kind of what do you recommend, or how do you kind of recommend small and medium sized or even large businesses sort of approach implementing AI in their workforce or in their company?
You hit it on the head. Speaking of tools, right? The hammer. What is a hammer for? No one buys a hammer for hammer's sake. They buy it because they want to build furniture, a house. It's jobs to
Smash
be
car.
done. Methodology. Yeah, smash a car. I love that. It's not working. Let's hit it over the head. Let's see that. That was my first car. Right? You start kicking it to make sure it starts. Mm. So yeah. So I think you hit it on the head. The problem statement. Where does it hurt? Show me where it hurts. And so there's two ways of seeing this, like, where am I running to, and then where am I running from? So running from is the pain point. What is the pain point I have as a business owner? Or what do I want to improve on? What do I want to build a bigger moat around my value proposition? And so once you get granular on that, then you start thinking about, is it a repetitive task or not? Obviously, consultants are great. You can bring in AI consultants, or you could just use ChatGPT, Gemini, the slew of different AI tools to ask them, is this the repetitive task? Give you For me, it all goes back to operations, productivity tools, operations. I'll give you a concrete example. If I know that creating a logo takes my design team 10 hours, the best, brightest team members that I have, they can create, first iteration, second iteration, third iteration, delivery to client, 10 hours. But I know I could use a logo creation tool that takes me 30 minutes. Does that mean I replace it completely? Like, no, that's silly. Like, no client in the right mind is going to pay premium pricing as they know they can go and find a logo. So what do? You think about operationally, okay, we have 10 hours here. Well, let's upfront the iteration phase, and just talk to our client and say, okay, what is your style? Like, you take that intake form, the intake information. You might use an AI logo creation tool to get you to version 1, have the client provide you feedback. Like, yeah, it's not really what I want. I want this color. I want this font. I want this type of texture on it. And then you bring in the human in the loop and say, okay, we have enough information. You didn't spend 8 hours to create version 1. You spend 30 minutes, an hour using this AI logo tool. You took that and then you replicated it with your capabilities. So those 10 hours of work shrank to 4 hours of work, 3 hours of work. And then those 6 hours, you could kind of scale, and you can use that to increase your clientele or lower your operational pricing. So that's one way you can use some AI tools that lower your operational costs. But that's just specific to my example. There's a ton of other examples for whatever business you have, but understanding your pain point. For us, it's always bottlenecking with the client, bottleneck of delivering solution, during that window of delivery. And so once we identified that, we realized, hey, wait, this client, we're spending 8 hours on the first iteration and the first version of the logo, where we should have spent maybe an hour using the AI tool. And now that we got a good sense of what the client actually wants, then we bring in the human, and that human can add that value add solution to it. So that's one
Yeah.
way we realize you can really drive some value for your company.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I like that you mentioned kind of like the what are we running from and what are we running towards, and really kind of taking time to define that and feel like, okay, where is it hurting in my business? And also like the operational piece, I think is super important too. That's actually something I've encountered with some of my clients is obviously AI tools like ChatGPT or different things have custom GPTs have streamlined my content creation processes and creating blog posts or doing research or whatever it is. And so rather than like lowering my prices or spending less time, it's like now I can write longer blog posts that go more into detail, more in depth. They're covering more topics. Like I'm just using the same hours that I would normally spend, but I'm allocating it in a different way. And I'm thinking about, okay, where can we squeeze the most juice, you know? And so instead of just pumping out a 1,000 word blog post that's pretty surface level and generic, I'm like, okay, let's do a 2,000 to 3,000 word pillar post. And it takes me the same amount of time now that I've set up custom GPTs and I'm using some of these AI tools. And obviously I proof and edit everything. And I've gotten very clear on the structure and the format, and we do, FAQs and we do listicles. And so I like that, what you mentioned of it's bringing in these pieces of, instead of just doing less or spending the same amount of time doing it ourselves, it's like, how can we partner with these AI tools to give a greater, higher quality output, for our clients, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean that's it, Ellie. It's value add. It's the value of consultants, the value of the larger enterprise play. It's definitely the value add piece. And so when you think about the Apples, they're the engineers and not creating the actual product, but they're the ones that are thinking about how do we make this experience more user friendly. And so that gives you the amount of time that you need to think a little bit more value added. And that's where the premium pricing can come in. So that's where I see a lot of the opportunity for on the creative space specifically, um,
Mhm.
for businesses.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really cool. And are there any like specific kind of AI tools that you like prefer working with, or any AI tools you're using sort of inside your company, either to do client work or to streamline your own processes?
Well, I am pretty agnostic. I have a far smarter folks doing that for me. So what I'm really good at is creating the problem statements and looking at the numbers and understanding, all right, this is how many hours it's taking us. Like, how do we provide more value in this? And is there a workaround in the solutions? Because like you said, there's no magic bullet. So depending if you're doing paid ads, copywriting, web dev, whatever it happens to be, there is a specific set of tools, AI tools within each category. So what I do is I just empower my team to come back to me with, their 3 to 5 favorite AI tools. And then I take an assessment into those tools to see which one makes the most sense financially and operationally. And then I look over the legality of it with our lawyers and see, does this make sense? We still want to protect our client? There's a definite space on that aspect as well. We've seen some amazing companies say you will take on the legal ramifications for using the AI tools as opposed to you as the client, but you have to pay a premium for that. So there's different ways to monetize. What we realized is that we have to build a moat ourselves if we want to stay within this creative space, within this agency space. And that's why we started the Smarts AI tool, which is all around using an AI tool to identify the pain points of the prospective customers. That's very easy to do with AI, but then having a human in the loop that can make an assessment based on that client, and then using the data that we're gathering to be hyper focused on city, state, the geolocation of that specific industry and sector. And so that is our magic sauce, basically, is what we realize really differentiates us, because it's not too confusing to the end user right now. I think you have to train the business owner, and that sounds really, I mean, it's not counterintuitive, just like everything else. How do we learn when we use our iPhones? We just didn't born with the iPhone. We started playing with the iPod, and we used our thumbs, and now we weren't pressing, we were using our thumbs, and to his credit, Steve Jobs realized the need of training the customer base to a point that they're comfortable using that type of solution. And then they released the iPhone. So there's a way of training your prospective customer base and what the value is on the AI solution you're offering. And for us, a business assessment report is something that they understand, but then hyperpowering them with AI. And then they're going to say, okay, well, I could just do that with ChatGPT or Gemini or which other little tools. Like, yes, but you don't have a human in the loop, nor do you have the data that really understands your specific marketplace. Cochabamba, La Paz, Lima, whatever you happen to be, we could get really granular with the data set to really understand who you're competing against and how we can add value to your specific marketplace. And so they get that. They get that intuitively as opposed to saying, oh, we're going to create an AI agent. We're going to help you do these workflows. And then their eyes start rolling over and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You lost me. So I think that piece is extremely important as well.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of people don't think about too is like, oh, I could just get this AI tool to do it. And it's like, everybody now has access to these AI tools. So the bar is now raised where you can't just go into ChatGPT and ask for a blog post and expect it to be amazing, you know? And also, like, the second piece is like, as a business owner, you still have to have someone write a prompt and get the content and put it on the website. Like, the AI is not at a point where it can do that for you. And so you still need a human to oversee it, whether that's someone in your team or a marketing agency. And you still need someone who knows what good content is and knows what a good marketing strategy is. And if you don't know that and ChatGPT gives you some information, like, you're just going to listen to it and take it as the Bible when it might not be actually very accurate or helpful or beneficial to your company. And so I think that that's like the piece that a lot of marketers can bring value to companies, to their businesses, to their clients of like, you know, we're using these tools, but like, we have the brains behind it. We know what we're looking for. We know what, you know, how to decide what target market or how to phrase this or what good copy sounds like or graphic design or what have you. And so it's like, yeah, I think there's this piece of like you said, educating people, educating clients of like, love the enthusiasm, great, you know, great effort. And like, let's elevate this, you know, because now everybody's got access to these tools and these systems. Like, it's just kind of raising the bar for everybody. And so how do we stand out and how do we get good content that's evidently like human focused rather than just generated by ChatGPT, for instance? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a yes and, not an and or, right? It's that idea of like how we add value. And I love that idea of prompt engineering. I think it's so important for us to understand how to write proper prompts and how to make sure we are reviewing those prompts and doing an iterative process of getting deeper and more granular, and then making sure there's no hallucinations, right? We understand that sometimes the responses might not be great. And I think there's something there. I think you hit on something that for me is very the tools, the prompts and the AI tools are really great when there's a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of text for it to learn from historically. But in industries or sectors that there's a limited amount of data, a limited amount of information, it's really hard for that tool to provide you the best response, the best answer. And that's where the human can really come in and add a lot of value. Because you can't teach it. Something like an image, it can learn a lot because there's tons of images. So in radiology, there's this one case study that I read, and it's like radiology is amazing because you can see 1,000, a million images of a broken bone, chin bone, or a broken elbow, and after seeing that 1 millionth image, is going to know what that specific break is because there's so much content there for it to learn from. But within an industry that doesn't have that much content, that much imaging, that much text, it's really hard for it to learn. So that's when the human comes in and provides a lot of value added. It's like, hey, you still need a human in this process to provide you the nuanced approach that you need. And I think that speaks to the authenticity piece that you were touching on a little bit later is, you know, we're not going to write a 500 word blog. We're going to write something that's more thoughtful and much more meaningful. And I think that's where a lot of clients can, when working with creatives, is the authentic experience and really honing in on the humanistic aspect of their business.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also something I spoke about in another podcast was the piece of like you mentioned, if there's a lot of content and information for the AI tool to draw on, then obviously it's going to be better. But there's also this piece of highly technical information. And so because this is just an example because I work a lot with accounting firms and financial services firms who are very highly technical, tax focused, and the hallucinations are real, right, in ChatGPT. And so it's very important to make sure when we're writing about such technical topics, even like legislation or law firms would have this issue where it's like making sure the data is like 100% accurate, because you just can't afford to make a mistake. You can't afford to tell someone the wrong information, and it's so hyper specific. So, like that's something that like an AI tool might fall short, for instance. And so I think it's really important to think about like what sort of content am I creating, and is it accurate, and verifying it and referencing, maybe that's referencing legislation or referencing medical websites or referencing a government website or a research article or something like it. I think especially with all the AI information and stuff that's coming out, it's going to probably become more and more important to have credible references and credible links to authoritative sources, especially from like an SEO standpoint. So, and I've also noticed the more like you mentioned, that granular detail, the more granular detail and specificity that I put into my blog posts for my own business and for my clients, it just ranks so much better in Google and in like LLMs. So I think it's kind of like the time and effort that people put in, especially in this day and age. Like it's like I've heard people say, it's never been easier than ever to do anything you want, but it's also never been easier than ever to do nothing. And so it's like this piece of if you take the time and effort to put in creating good content, and whether that's a pillar post, 3,000 words, whether that's a really good logo or a video or whatever it is in your space, I think the dividends just pay off because so many people will just do the absolute bare minimum. So if you can go above that, like you said, creating value for clients, I think there's just huge dividends to be made in that.
Yeah, and the barriers to entry, just because it has democratized a lot of folks, I think just because you can do it doesn't mean you're going to do it well. So there's definitely some truth in that.
Or at all.
But I see some astonishing things because we work with a lot of video production teams, and there's nothing like great high quality video production, but you'll be surprised how many customers want a more rugged and more analog and more like low budget, for lack of a better word, video. Like they want to connect with videos that don't feel high production cost. They want to create with content that feels authentic. Yes. And you can't, have to realize, okay, well, how do I do that? And we were working with some video production companies the other day, and they couldn't, they were so well trained that they can't go downstream. It was so weird. It was like, wait, this is too high gloss. We need a way more. And the truth is, like, grabbing your phone and video can drive revenue for you. And that was really shocking to me to see that the direction that the consumer base, a lot of people give me a lot of grief because I do work with certain tech companies, and they're like, oh, they change in a whim and their algorithm changes and blah, blah, blah. And I explain to them, it's the consumer that they're following. They're following consumer habits. And if the consumer habits over index and really appreciate this type of content, this type of video, this type of audio, then they're going to give those type of content formats the benefit and the traction and the eyeballs. And so it's not them choosing that, it's what you as a consumer base are doing and are responding to when it comes to the type of content you're creating.
Yeah, I think I was talking to a friend about this actually the other day, about just the piece of, like you mentioned, over polished content. And I absolutely agree. It's almost like because everybody is creating polished video content, now it's swung back the other way, because to interrupt, like marketing is all about pattern interrupt and disrupting, like what's everybody doing and then do something different. And so if everybody's making polished videos, make an unpolished video to stand out. And so it's this really interesting piece. And I think I actually had another guest share. He's kind of blown up a bit on TikTok. He's getting a lot of leads through TikTok as an SEO agency. And he just said he goes for a walk at 4 or 5 o'clock every day with his dog, and he just records a TikTok video once a day while he's walking. And so after I interviewed him, I went and had a look at his TikTok, and it's so like rough and ready. And it's just, he's literally just holding his phone, walking sometimes past like a construction site or wherever, just around his neighborhood, talking about SEO, and people love it. And it's a really interesting time to be alive because, like we have all these AI tools and we have all these programs that can make us look polished and sound polished and, do email outreach that makes us sound like we wear a vocabulary, like we have these tools that make us sound polished. But then now it's like, oh, everybody's doing that. So we have to do something different. We have to be unpolished. We have to be more raw and edgy. And I think it's just really interesting how the marketplace works.
Yeah. And that's a great point. I think I was geeking out on that idea a couple weeks ago because I was listening to a podcast, and this individual, a very controversial individual, was talking about exactly what you just mentioned. And what he drew from his conclusion was, hey, guess what? We are all large language models. Like the way we consume information, the way we operate, the way we capture information is a script. And you're literally running a script. When you meet someone, hey, how are you doing? Great. How are you doing? Great. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a nice
just a
day.
script.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right.
Yeah.
You're not really listening and
program.
paying attention. And so we're just programmed to walk through life. And I think there's been way more creative ways of talking about this. When I was a kid, when I was in college, I fell into philosophy, specifically existentialism. And one of my favorite type of movies was the zombie genre because they really did a great job highlighting like The Walking Dead, this idea that we're not really awake as we're walking through life, and we're just based humans responding to our base needs. And if you're not self-aware enough, you kind of fall into that rabbit hole of just being this walking dead zombie. And he was kind of referencing that as large language models. Like, yeah, you're training it and it's being repetitive. And we learn through repetition, but it's the person who breaks out of that, the individual who breaks out of that and creates an authentic experience with someone and really tries to connect with that person in a way that's humane. Surprise, surprise there. And I think the AI tools are a reflection of that. We're starting to see, okay, this is very repetitive. So the person who's going to win out is the person who's not repetitive, who's authentic, who connects with the consumer base, who connects with their clients, who connects with their employees, and is able to offer something real as opposed to something trite and repetitive. So that really kind of hit home. And then as I was walking through because I work in the space, talking to folks, it was crazy. I think the 20 people that I bumped into, they all had a script. Everyone was on their script. And that's not a knock on them. It's just, I guess we're so busy that we don't realize that we're not creating these engaging opportunities to really connect with folks. And I'm very blessed to work in an environment where I get to present in person, and I try to understand the pain point and understand the humanistic aspect of this person who has his own business, and really understand why they started their company and how I can really be of value. And if I can't be of value, let them know, hey, I would love to help you, but maybe I'm not the best person. There's someone else that can definitely fit. And it was just an eye-opening experience of how people respond to you when you genuinely care and listen and try to understand. Empathy, who would have thought it?
It's so funny because again, it's like a pattern interrupt, right? Like everybody's like, "Hi, how you going?" And it's like they don't actually want to know. Like if you were like, "Oh, my dog died, and my mom's in hospital, and like I'm having money issues," they'd just be like, "Whoa, no, thank you." Like I was just running my social script.
Pass, yeah.
I don't actually care.
Yeah.
So
What's wrong with you?
like,
You're making me so awkward.
And so it's like, I think, like, again, like it comes back to that pause of like, am I really giving this person my full attention when I'm talking to them? Am I here? Am I present, in person and in marketing with people? It's kind of, thinking like, what is it they want, or what is it they need? Or like, and you mentioned kind of that truth piece of being honest, of going, like this is who we serve and this is what we do. And if we're not a fit, like we'll tell you, we're not just going to promise you the moon and like, try and do everything for you, and that's something I do in my firm. I'm like, I don't do paid ads. I don't do social media. Like I'm not good at them and I don't enjoy them, but I'm really, really good at SEO and copywriting. And like, that's my focus. in highly technical industries. And so it's for me been very helpful to be like, well, look, this is what I do and this is why and this is how it works. And like, if that's not good for you, like, again, like I'll tell you as well. And I think that that's so refreshing for people because especially in a marketing space, people love to make big promises and say like, yeah, we're going to do it all and we're going to, give you these results in 90 days. And it can be like, I think it's kind of given the industry a little bit of a bad rap because people are like, well, I'm not getting results, and so then they're kind of wary. And so I think to bring honesty, to bring truth, to bring transparency, to be present with people when they're talking and listen to them, not thinking about like, what's the next question I'm going to ask them. I think that just goes so far. And especially in the age of AI where, everybody's like busy and scrolling and using AI tools, to really stop and be present with someone is like such a rarity that like they'll feel that and they'll be like, oh, I like this person. I want to work with them. At least that's my ideology.
It's a superpower. Listen, Elliot, it's a superpower.
It really is.
Connecting and listening and not trying to think about your response to the question or what you're going to say next, but genuinely listen to what they're saying. It's weird. I have a yoga meditation practice, and it's every morning at 20 minutes. And one of the practices was about genuinely listening to the person and not thinking about the response. And you'll be surprised how difficult it's been for me.
It's
the
really
past couple months. It's just like, wow, I never knew I had this internal script going at all times,
monologue.
it's trying to like think about what I'm gonna and so now some clients and some friends are like, are you listening to me? Because I'm like listening to them, but I'm not thinking about what I'm gonna say. So I don't have anything to say. I'm just like, oh, that's fascinating. That really makes a lot of sense why you're going through these really difficult experience within your career. And I don't know what to tell you. I just want to help you because one of the offshoots of this is that we are seeing disruption within our industries, and we are seeing folks get laid off. And, where I'm at in the United States, we're seeing some corporate entities really adopt and really dive head deep into AI and fire some of their workforce. And how do you respond to a friend that you've known for 30 years that is potentially going to get laid off because of AI? And that for me was quite an experience where I just want to listen. I don't want to solve your problems. I think I'm just going to listen here. And taking that approach to my team, taking that approach to the work that I do, taking that approach to the clients that I work with and trying to listen to what they're trying to say to me. Because as you know, when you work with clients, there's a lot of code switching and a lot of code speak. They're saying one thing, but they mean another. And you kind of have to speak in multiple, like corporate entities and then small business. And you're trying to understand what they're really trying to say. And it's not as easy as it used to be because of the need to be more protective, whatever it is that they're going through or the work that they're doing. So it's one of those things that I think will differentiate you if you're able to truly listen, slowly try to understand them, and try to connect with them, even if you're not the right fit. Like, hey, I'm just trying to help you. If I can't help you, I'll find someone that can.
Yeah, point them in the right direction. I think you're right. And I think, like it's something I've talked about on this podcast is, kind of what works in your personal life will very much work in business. Like if you treat people with respect and you're present with them and you listen to them and don't just trying to fix their problems and word vomit on them, like that applies in a personal scenario and in a professional scenario. And, something I do when I'm talking to people is I try and feel my feet on the ground, like during the conversation while I'm talking or whatever, because it just keeps me anchored in the present. And I love what you said about, like if a friend comes to you and talks to you and rather than kind of, throwing them like a quick fix or a solution, it's like, I think what people really want is just to be heard and just to be listened to and be like, man, that sucks. Like, I don't have the answers, but if I can help, like I will, rather than just, you should do this and go into like unsolicited advice mode. Like you're messing up your life, and it's the same with the podcast, like I know a lot of people just have their standard questions and I have, like I really, look at the person and then I have I have like a list of questions, but I often only cover like 2 or 3 of them because I'm just like, oh, they said this thing, like let's follow that tangent, and go into that direction. Or I notice, oh, they said something that resonated in me. I want to reflect that, rather than just someone says something really profound and then I'm like, so what do you think about this? And just go in a different direction. And
Yeah.
it's just,
Funny enough, I mean, I literally, the last podcast I did, I got emotional. I got very, very, it might have been the lack of sleep. I don't want to make excuses, but I got very emotional because he asked me a very personal question and it was indirectly personal. Um, but yeah, I'm not trying to hide who I am. If some people like my personality type, some people don't. And I don't have all the answers, then I'm very like an inch wide, a mile deep type of individual. I don't have the answers to everything. Like you said, I know SEO well, I know copywriting well. If you want to work with someone that knows how to do this, I'm your person. Uh, I'm the same way when it comes to my companies. And like, hey, I'm not a jack of all trades. I know one or two things very well that I can help you with. And if I don't know it, I'll find someone that can help you. So
mm,
it's tough to, especially nowadays, to work in a space that it feels like everything's moving so fast. But I think if you're okay with stopping and slowing down, I think that would pay dividends. And I think it goes right back to the beginning statement that you said, which was, hey, you don't have to use AI for everything. Just understand your pain points, understand what we're trying to fix here. We might not need the big shiny tool to get this done.
No, I totally agree. And I think something I've been learning lately is just there's magic in the pause, in the let's stop, like every Friday now I have a reminder to stop and make a list of like what worked this week, what didn't, what gave me energy and what drained me. And to really kind of zoom out, and take stock of like kind of what you said, like where am I going and where am I running from? And really getting clear of like, what do I want? Like
Mm.
what's the point of like building a huge business and having all this money if you're miserable? And so like,
Yeah.
how can we align the things that, doing things that bring us joy and also like building that into our business rather than just, oh, I have to meet this KPI. Oh, I have to onboard this many clients a month. It's like, well, what do you want to do? And just for a minute, think about that, like pause. And so that's been a really cool lesson for me. So, but
I
yeah.
really hope what you're saying, people listen to what you just said. I think that's its winning goal. Like literally, why am I doing this? Why am I sacrificing my family? Why am I sacrificing my friends? Why am I sacrificing my health? For what?
Mm-hmm.
And man, that's very profound because think if I didn't feel like I was helping people out, I would have left this position a long time, this company a long time ago. So I think understanding your why and really diving into it because there's so much content out there that's I I don't know. I don't know if it's, let's say, capitalism, what's going on in the ethos, and it's in the air. But it's just like it can't be the way. That can't be how our society is structured. We have to find a better way out.
Mm, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And so, sorry, we're almost on time, but for people who want to know more about you and what you do and connect with you, obviously you have your own marketing agency. Where is the best place for them to connect with you online?
Yeah, you could go to Braven Agency. You could email me at Robert@Braven Agency. You could drop me a like on Instagram or on LinkedIn. I prefer LinkedIn, Robert at Roberto Rob the Marketer, excuse me. You could find me. I have Braven Agency or Smart. If you're in California and you want to get some free technical assistance training, I also ran this really fun workshop with Google called Grow with Google. I'm their California coach. And so there's just a bunch of fun ways you can connect with me and we can work together to help you grow your company.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for your time. And thank you, listeners, for joining us.